Welcome to this episode of the WorkXO Culture Chat podcast, where we explore the intersection of workplace culture and the future of work. We feature progressive leaders who intentionally manage their cultures so that you might also experience the power of doing the same. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charlie Judy, the founder and CEO of WorkXO, with yet another edition of the Culture Chat podcast. It's been a while since we've posted because we've had a bunch of stuff flying over on our end. If you've been paying attention, you'll know exactly to which I refer. And if not, you should check it out. It's fun. We're excited about the investment we're making, the progress we're seeing, and the opportunity we have with a really cool new partnership. So check it out. That is not what we are here to discuss today. Really excited to have a thoughtful, talented, accomplished senior HR leader in Jen Marzlik, who has been doing some really great stuff with a cool organization, digital marketing, creative advertising, PR agency that she's going to share a lot with us about. And the central topic here, which I think is just really important and crucial to all things culture, is all about how we get deliberate in aligning the way that we work and the culture around it, so that culture reinforces and clarifies the way that we need to work in order to drive success in our distinct business. And that requires this deliberation, this intention and work, hard work. Jen and her organization have been doing it the right way for, I think, a long time, and she's going to share with us some cool thoughts on how to do that, maybe in your own organization. So I'm going to let Jen introduce herself. Jen, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm really glad to be here today. I'm Jennifer Marzlik. I am the Chief Talent Officer for Havas Chicago. It is a group of advertising and marketing agencies that are part of a worldwide global network. And we are based in downtown Chicago as well as West Town. And before that, I was with Grubhub for a couple of years as head of HR, a software as a service company, surepayroll.com, and then previously spent about 10 years at Room and Board Home Furnishings. I've focused mostly on the recruitment and talent management side in really fast-growing companies.
That's awesome. And so I want to say a couple of things before we launch into this important conversation. One, as I was getting on the phone with Jennifer, I learned that she was scheduling a trip to Paris. So you mentioned downtown Chicago, but you also have headquarters and, of course, operations over in Paris. That's exciting. And also I want to say that I've been to the Havas offices here in Chicago, and they are everything that you would expect of a digital / creative / modern day / futuristic workplace. And all of that on the surface is really, really cool. And it's the kind of thing that people ooh and ah about. And I think it has a lot to do with what we talk about as culture. But one of the things that I think Jennifer can share with us, which is really the meat on the bones when it comes to culture, is, yeah, sure, you guys have foosball tables and beer in the fridge, but it goes,
we do.
It goes a lot, and you do, but it goes a lot deeper than that. It goes a heck of a lot deeper than that. You all are deliberate. Everything you do deliberately when it comes to your culture and employee experience overall. Let's talk about that. Tell us more about the kind of the how and why of that.
Well, this agency has been around for a very long time and has been in our building in River North for about 20 years. And it used to be a cube farm with private offices and bright colored walls and many, many cubicles. And it wasn't really conducive to the work that we did or really to the employee base that we have. We have a heavily millennial, young employee base. And that sitting in a cubicle is not really how they go about doing their work. And so about 3 years ago, our executive team embarked on reinventing the office and not just remodeling it, but really reimagining how people work and making decisions that not only were reflective of the employee population, but also what we wanted to say about who we are as a company. And so a lot of the decisions that we made about our office are deeply rooted in what we believe and what our culture is. And the first one of those is that it's a completely open office environment and nobody has a private office, including our CEO and our chief creative officer and everybody else on the executive team. It's much more collaborative that way. The other decision that they made was that they wanted all of our employees to sit by the client teams. You know, advertising is professional and client service oriented. And so that seems revolutionary in advertising. It's not revolutionary in some other industries like technology, where product teams sit together and it's a more agile environment. But we wanted to create a much more collaborative, fast-thinking, agile environment in advertising and marketing. And in doing that, we sit by client teams. And so we work with AutoZone, and the whole AutoZone team works together regardless of whether they're creative or account services or media. And I think that we do better work because of that. And those seem sort of like unsexy culture things, but they're very deliberate. There's some sexier sort of culture things that we have done, like we're a dog-friendly office. That sort of sometimes can feel sort of stuntish, like, oh, they get to bring dogs to the office. But you know what? Dogs help make people feel calm and help people feel good, and really enhances the employee experience, and our clients really enjoy seeing them when they're visiting. And so the dogs have really become part of who we are, and there's a reasoning behind it. It wasn't just to like say, oh yeah, you could bring your dogs.
Yeah, so this is what I think is really so important about this, is that it's not like you all looked around and said, look at what all the other kind of culture cool kids are doing. We got to do that. It was that, hey, there's a real, like, there's a business reason for this. This kind of, you know, either design or in the case of the dogs, the kind of the policy. This advances, it furthers, it reinforces, it clarifies what's really important to us. So I want to unpack that a little bit. I mean, you talked about that the Cube Farm was not conducive to the work that you do. What did you guys do to like come to that realization? Was it an aha moment? You also mentioned that you kind of reinvented this. Was that an initiative? Was it we're going to be explicit about this, we're going to devote a lot of time and attention to it? Talk a little bit more about how you got to that point.
Havas overall has moved to a philosophy of togetherness and considers all of its physical offices to be a village. And in the village, there are a lot of different functions and sometimes a lot of different agencies. So within the building that I'm sitting in right now, I have employees who work for a creative agency, and employees that work for a media agency, and employees that work for an experiential marketing agency, and a digital and CRM marketing agency, and people who work for a healthcare agency and a public relations agency. And all of those sorts of businesses operate a little bit differently. And I think that we in Chicago really wanted to say it takes a village to serve a client. And so we started pitching business together. So probably 75% of the clients that we have in this building are somehow shared. They're shared between the creative and the media agency. They're shared between the creative and the experiential agency. They're shared between the media agency and the data and CRM agency. And in doing that, it would bring us together. It brings efficiency for our clients because then we become a one-stop shop for more than one function for those clients. And it creates more of a sense of community for us in the village and in the office. And I think that sitting by client team was a natural extension of that, because if we sat by discipline, if all of the creatives sat together and all of the strategists sat together and all of the account people sat together, what happens is you become an assembly line where you go to meetings throughout the day, but the actual workflow goes from one team to another department, to another department, to another department. And by having employees sit together by client team, they're talking about AutoZone all day because everyone that's sitting in this area works on the same AutoZone client, or they're all talking about Hefty and Reynolds because we work for Hefty and Reynolds. And they're not just talking about cool creative stuff or cool strategy stuff. They're really, truly behaving like the marketing department for that client. And I think it's changed the quality of our work for the better. For Reynolds Wrap, we did a huge campaign that was an Instagram channel called Endless Table. And I don't think it would have come about if we didn't sit together by client teams, because the creative team was talking about creating something content heavy that had recipes and different creative ways to use Reynolds Wrap. And the media team said, we could do that on Instagram, and here's how Instagram works and what we would need to create in terms of deliverables in order to make that real. And I just don't think that would have happened if they weren't working and sitting together all day long.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I love this philosophy of togetherness, which I can, now that I don't know that I knew that necessarily when I took a walk with you through your offices, and now that I've heard that, I see it kind of living and breathing in your space. Tell me if there's lots of directions I want to go with this, so we may be a little disjointed, but tell me if is there any downside to, this, let's just take philosophy of togetherness. So let's just say that that's something we agree is important to us, and there's a business reason for it, and it drives success, and we've seen it play out. And so it needs to kind of show up in everything that we do. And you've taken this approach to, this more collaborative environment. Are there some downsides to this? Like, do people get, is it a little bit too much? People go, God, do I have to, I really have to sit with this team anymore? I mean, do you see anything that kind of gets in the way if you go too far with any one of these things?
Certainly there's a downside to anything, right? Because too much of anything can kind of go over to the dark side. I think that anything that you do deliberately takes discipline and takes thoughtfulness, and that making sure that we walk our talk every day, regardless of what that's about, is hard work, right? Because I think human nature is to slide back to whatever we did 5 years ago, or whatever we did when we were younger, or whatever is easiest to do. And sometimes maintaining culture and making sure that employees can see that it's living and breathing, and that it permeates it's the filter for the decisions that we make. In order for employees to see that, you got to be really rigorous about it. And that's hard work sometimes.
Oh, man. So if there's anything that you leave this podcast with today, if there's anything that you leave any of our podcasts with, I don't know, maybe we've done 35 of them at this point. What Jen just said is so important. So anything, anytime you need or want or purport to do something deliberately, and particularly when it comes to your culture, it takes work, takes commitment, takes dedication. Like you got to do it. You use the words, walk the talk. And the minute you do not, that is an everlasting proposition, by the way. The minute you do not, it loses steam, loses credibility. People start to poke holes in it. That's exactly the way that I hoped you would answer that question. I can promise you that was not planted that way. You got to stick with it. Like, you got to be upfront about it. You got to be sometimes a little bit nauseating about it, or else it really doesn't live out its purpose. So
people can tell.
Yeah, they really can. And you want them to know, right? Like when you, maybe you can even just talk about this for a second. When you bring recruits into this space, my guess is it's very clear that this is the way we work. And either you like that or you don't. But I'd rather you know it now than when you get here and you've been here for 30 days and you're like, this is not my gig. I mean, have you seen that play out at all?
Oh, 100%. I think that part of the role of the recruiting team, and one of the things we've been doing education sessions that are about hiring for culture. And of course, it's not, at Havas, our culture is very edgy, and it's very culturally relevant. And so our education sessions are called We Hire Badasses. And part of that is about how do we pitch Havas to candidates, and how do we balance the pitch, right? Because I think that some people can walk into our office and look at it very romantically and see, oh, you sit by client team, or there's no offices, or the executive team is accessible to people, or you have free snacks in the kitchen and you have 3 different coffee machines. And I think that can be very sexy, but part of the pitch is that it's really hard to maintain that. It takes every single employee being diligent about that, and that it's not for everyone. Right? Not every culture is for everyone. And we really are edgy. And when we say edgy, we mean edgy. And when one of our agencies, the Annex, their tagline is that Annex never sleeps. And that kind of means sometimes that Annex never sleeps.
Right? Yeah, right. That really means that we never sleep.
Right. And so if you don't like being around dogs and you feel like you should be working from 8:30 to 5 every day, and you feel like you should be working and only doing what's on your job description, this is not the right environment for that, because this is an environment where our values are being all in like Evel Knievel, ride or die. I know I might not make that jump, but I'm going to try that jump anyway. Having heart like Robin Hood, we're in, marketing, so we like to steal from the rich and give to the poor. And it's our perception who's rich and who's poor, and who that money should go to. But that's also being generous and having humility and being helpful with people. And all in is about what's your work ethic and having hustle and being willing to do things that are outside of your day-to-day in order to make sure that we win. And the third value is clever. And, everybody says that they want to have, people who are smart, but cleverness is a little bit different, right? It's more punk rock than that. It's like, yeah, we know how to play our instruments, but we're going to play them a little bit different because we think the result is going to be a little bit better. So we're looking for that cleverness. And we're talking to candidates and we're trying to ascertain to which of those 3 values that they lead with, and do they have enough of all 3 of those values that they're going to be comfortable here? Because much like any industry, there are some advertising companies where they have a big company mentality and everybody's job is a little bit more narrow and it's a little bit more structured and there's a little bit more infrastructure and resources to tap into. Havas operates a lot more like a startup, a really big startup, but a startup where we have an entrepreneurial mentality and we don't have a lot of resources. We look to people to say, well, if there's no process for this and you want a process for this, you tell me what the process should be, and then let's talk about it. And that's not comfortable for everybody.
No, indeed.
And that's okay.
It is okay. So first, I got to give a shout out to All In like Evel Knievel. I love that. The thing that I like about this, which is again another little bit of a side note, but it's important that you don't say, or that you don't just say, yeah, you know what, we're really committed, and we want our people to be really committed. Like that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. If you say things like all in like Evel Knievel, it starts to mean something more. It starts to have more depth to it. I can start to touch and feel and even kind of get a sense for what that looks like. So that's great that you guys have your words that help you convey how important those things are. That's really cool. I want to just for a second note, and for those of you that are listening that are maybe candidates for jobs, and we all are, right? We're all free agents. Think about the importance of walking the halls and having the opportunity to get a sense for what this place looks and feels like. I mean, you're going to spend your life here. So that's an important part of the experience, the artifacts, the vibe, whether they have the 1 or 2 coffee machines. I mean, we poke fun at those things, but they're important. They are an important part of your experience, and you need to get a sense for them as you're considering opportunities across the board. So one thing that I'd love to get a little bit more input from you on is your culture is always kind of evolving. It's always shifting, which means likely that your kind of workplace, given the fact that you're very committed to it, is also shifting. What kinds of signals are you looking for? Like, how do you pay attention to how things are shifting and what needs to be adjusted accordingly? Is that a natural process? Do you actually have some mechanisms or some tools that you use to make sure that you're giving that the appropriate attention? Talk to us about the evolution a little bit.
I mean, some of it's organic and some of it is a little bit more prescribed, right? So we're doing employee engagement surveys every 18 months, and we then continue to do focus groups and exit surveys and new hire check-ins to really sort of tap into what's going on and be able to see what the trend is over time in terms of the employee population. So those are some just milestones and programs and things that we're doing. But our industry and our work is really about being culturally relevant. And so we're also trying to just tap into culture outside of our work environment. And so right now, some of the things that we're talking about are Black History Month and the Black Panther movie and Women's History Month and International Women's Day next week. And we're talking about gun control after what happened in Florida last month. And so we're also kind of like evolving and talking about things, and the way that our employees and the way that our population kind of views those things will also continue to shape our culture. The Me Too movement has helped shape our culture and had an effect on us, and in a good way, because I think it's made people more open and more willing to talk about things, and that all of those things kind of help us really see how we as leaders can make sure that we're creating a great environment for people, but also how we're leading the business and winning. Man,
I love this external signal thing. Really fascinating. I mean, I hope that we have a chance to talk more about that. It's so cool to think about your paying attention to those things and then bringing them in within your four walls in recognition of the fact that they are going to have some impact in some form or fashion, and maybe in some ways more direct than others. We actually have a piece of our culture assessment that is about measuring how well, or not how well, but really how organizations do that. You know, are they paying attention to the outside world? And you all are doing that in a real way, an authentic way. I'd love to spend more time talking about that. Alas, we're running out of time, and so I want to be conscious of that. Say a few words around, Jen, how this kind of comes to life in your organization. Who drives it? Who owns it? You use the word we a lot. My guess is you and you personally and your department or your team are behind this and maybe even formally stewards to it. But how does this show up, in terms of ownership and activity and leadership in your organization?
I mean, I think it's really driven by the whole executive team, and without things coming from the top, I think it's more authentic, right? Like, so if you know that your CEO and your president and your CFO and not just your head of HR or your head of talent believes in something, but that everybody believes in it, that there's a different sense of commitment to it and a different depth to it. So I think it really comes from all of us on the executive team. My team really partners with employees and business leaders to make it real. And so some of the things that we work on are driven by cross-functional employee group. We have cross-functional employee groups that are focused on cultural engineering and that are focused on, we have like a suggestion box called WTF, which is what's the fix?
I love that.
And we have done a bunch of lobby installations and activations around different initiatives. Last year we did one, and we have it up again this year for Black at Work, to talk about the Black experience in the workplace. Last year we did an activation for International Women's Day. We also did something to celebrate Pride Month last year, and those are really driven by employees, and then they partner with members of the executive team as sponsors to say, here's what I want to do, and then we work together really to come up with an outcome. But I can't take credit for that. I feel it's more authentic when it's driven out of the culture. It comes out of the employee groups, and sometimes it comes from a senior level employee, but a lot of the times it comes from very junior level employees who are just very passionate about bringing something to the table at the office, and I'm just really proud that we can help facilitate that for them.
Yeah. So I am going to risk running over our time here because I just want I'm fascinated. I mean, are there times where stuff shows up in that WTF box or that lands in your desk somewhere sometime where you have to say no? Or have you figured out a way to pretty much accommodate within reason anything that's brought in good faith?
Oh no, we say no all the time.
You have.
I mean, some of this, of course, like some of the stuff that ends up in that box is super relevant. It is, something about what we could change at the coffee bar, or what we could change about the snacks, or something about how we could get an initiative or an employee group going, and we are 100% behind it. But employees walk by that box, and sometimes you get something like, can we have free cowboy boots for everyone in the office?
Well,
No,
yeah, of course.
not. We don't even have a cowboy boot client. Maybe if we did, we could do free cowboy boots for everybody in the office. So, sometimes it's just a critique of the music that's playing on the speakers. And we might revisit that. Although we've had a lot of debates, we play a lot of hip hop music in our office, and that is very deliberate, and it's driven by the executive team. It's a reflection of the culture that we want to create. It's also a reflection of the type of work that we want to create for our clients. And so we're probably never going to turn off the hip hop music and turn on the Beatles. Not that the Beatles are not good.
Do you do the explicit hip hop, or is it like, is it for all audiences?
It's both.
Okay. All right.
It's both, but like, that is part of who we are. And that's one of those things, in addition to the dogs, that when you come for a visit, you're going to experience that. We have TVs in our kitchens, and they are almost 100% of the time turned to Viceland. And that's part of our culture. And so sometimes there's something on at 9 a.m. that might not be really appropriate for 9 a.m., but that's part of who we are. And so if we get some WTFs about, can we watch HGTV? Probably not. Can we watch World Cup soccer? 100%.
Yeah. Figure out who you are, figure out who you need to be that, own it, stay committed to it. Don't apologize about it. That's what you guys have been doing. Really excited to hear your story. Thanks for sharing it with us. I wish we could talk more. Those of you that have listened to this, just go check out Havas Chicago and poke around. It's just a cool place. I'm sure Jen would be happy to connect with you and to network. And she's got all sorts of knowledge beyond obviously this conversation to share. So Jen, maybe just share a little bit about how people can find you.
You can find me at chi.havas.com, chi.havas, HAVAS.com, or on LinkedIn at Jennifer Marszalek, spelled with an SV. It's long. But I'm an active member of HERMAC in Chicago, if you're in the Chicago community, or the Illinois Technology Association. So would love to connect.
Great. Well, thanks again for being here today and for sharing such a great piece of content. Thanks to all of our listeners. You can share, please do. Find us on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, et cetera, et cetera. Check us out at www.workxo.com. And signing off until the next time.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you won't miss our regular programming. Forward-thinking organizations use WorkXO's culture-fueled people analytics to optimize their workforce. And they out-recruit, out-engage, and outperform their competition every single day. Learn more about our cloud-based culture management platform at www.workxo.com. Thanks again.